Hello, everyone. Welcome back to On Point Politics. And today we're going to be comparing the polling data and adjusted errors from the 2020 election to my current forecast. Make sure to hit the like button if you do enjoy this analysis, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. And so, just to preface this video, we see Donald Trump is leading the national aggregate by 0.6%. That is a little bit smaller than what it was back in the beginning of March. However, Donald Trump in the RCP aggregate still leads by quite a bit. And if you notice, this map shows the 2020 polling errors comparing the 538 projections from June 1st of 2020 to the real results. And what you'll notice is that the polling data was actually slightly more accurate in June than when it was right by the time we actually got to the election. The polling data was significantly more off by the time we got to the election than what it was in June. And so if we actually look right now, Donald Trump leads by around, over 2 points. Basically, the entire month of June, he's been above 2 points in the RCP aggregate. In all of June, Donald Trump has essentially led by pretty much almost about a point and a half to an extent. That's roughly what we've been looking at, maybe a little bit less, but we see that Donald Trump has been leading, which is way greater than he's ever even, led by the past two cycles where both candidates led him the entire time. We could even see here on 538 that Biden finished off with an 8.4 percentage point lead in the polling aggregate and only won the national popular vote by 4.5 points. We can see here in the 2020 presidential election, he was able to get 51.3% of the national popular vote to Donald Trump's 46.9%, and only won in Georgia, Wisconsin, and Arizona. And we actually can see here that as of right now, these were the 538 projections. They were very off in a lot of crucial states like Florida, Ohio, for example, Arizona, Nevada. These margins were ridiculously off in some of these states. And so what we're going to be looking at is we're essentially going to look at all of the polling data and how wrong they were in 2020 and apply those errors to the new polling data to kind of guesstimate where the election could be as of right now. Just to preface this is not my actual prediction. My actual prediction is this map right here that you see, where Donald Trump gets 341 electoral college votes to Biden's 197 electoral college votes. We're just going to compare the data with the adjusted polling errors to see how close it aligns with my actual model. And so the first thing we're going to do is basically cast all of these safe Democrat and Republican states. We see here Donald Trump is going to win all of these states in a pretty big fashion that I'm listing off here as of right now. We're going to be adding more states in this column that weren't here last time: South Carolina, Alaska, Iowa, Ohio, Florida, and Texas are all going to be in the safe Republican column, including Maine's 2nd congressional district. For example, just to give you a little bit of a preface here, if we were to go to the state of Texas, we see Donald Trump in the 2024 polling aggregate leads by 11.1 percentage points. Here, the polling was off by 4.1 percentage points. So if you were to add that to this polling aggregate, Donald Trump would be winning the state by over 15 points, and he manages to do so in Iowa, Ohio, and Florida as well, which already gives him 219 safe electoral votes, which is exactly what I have for him here in my actual forecast. If we look at the safe Democrat states, we have California, Maryland, DC, Massachusetts, and Vermont, just giving him 81 electoral votes as of right now. So we're going to be going from west to east, covering all the likely lean and tilt states in this electoral college scenario. The first state we're going to be looking at is the state of Washington, where Joe Biden does have some polls where he's ahead, some where he's not. So if we actually look at my election model forecast, I do have a polling aggregate for Washington that I have constructed for myself, which has him ahead by 6 percentage points. The polling error was around 4.6 points in favor of Joe Biden. And so if we were to apply that, the state of Washington would be in the lean Democrat category as of right now. If we were to look at the state of Oregon, we see that Joe Biden actually does a little bit better in polling data here. And in my aggregate, on the On Point Politics model currently has the state as a 6 point victory as of right now. If we go to the map here and look at the polling error, it was around a 3 point miss in favor of Biden. And so we can see that also puts the state in the lean Democrat column. These would be way closer results than the 2020 election, where he was actually able to win all these states by safe margins, 19 and 16 respectively. For the next state, we have Nevada, which is a crucial battleground state. As of right now, we can see the polling average is around 4.7 percentage points. The election was off here by around 3.7 percentage points. And so if we were to apply that here, we would actually get a scenario of Donald Trump winning the state by almost, 8.5 to 9 points. And what's quite interesting is that my election forecast currently has the state as a 9.9 percentage point victory for the former president, which is something very interesting to note, that the adjusted polling is very similar to what my current forecast has in the state of Nevada, especially with both of them being in the likely Republican column. If we go to the state of Arizona, we're going to see that Donald Trump leads here by 4.2 percentage points. The polls here were off by 2.3 percentage points. And so if we were to add that to this aggregate, we would get a 6.5 point victory for Donald Trump in the state of Arizona. And right now, I actually have the state of Arizona as a 9.7 percentage point victory. So that is somewhat almost within the margin of error. It is around like a 3.2 percentage point miss from my current forecast, but it is still in the likely Republican column nonetheless. Colorado is a state that's been trending to the left. My forecast actually has it way closer. I have it as a lean Democrat margin. It is currently forecasted as a 4.4 percentage point victory. But as of right now, the polling aggregate currently has it. If we actually go to my polling aggregate here, the state is a 6.5 polling lead. And this is actually the only state, not the only state, but there's technically two states where the polls actually overestimated Trump, which was Colorado and Maryland. We see Colorado, the polls underestimated Biden by 1.8 percentage points. And so if you were to apply that to that polling aggregate, it would put the state in the likely Democrat column as of right now. For the state of New Mexico, we also can go over here and look at the polling here. There was a new poll that actually has Biden up by 7, so the polling is not really seeming to get that close. And if we look at my aggregate, as of right now, we could essentially put that state, in the likely Democrat column. The polling lead is around 7.5, which is where I would probably have it right now. If we look at the polling error, we see the state was off by 2.2 percentage points. And so applying that to that aggregate, that actually barely puts the state in the likely Democrat column. It is almost below this classification as of right now. Hawaii is going to be a big shocker to people because the polling average here was actually very off. It was 7.2 percentage points off in 2020 from the real result in favor of Biden. And so if we go to the polling aggregate here, we'll actually see that they have probably not updated all of the polling data. There was an internal with Donald Trump up by 3 percentage points. So I have factored that into my forecast. We can actually look at the polling aggregate over here. Joe Biden is currently only leading the state of Hawaii in the polling aggregate by 2.5 points. And so if you were to apply that polling miss here, which is around 7 points, we actually see that Donald Trump barely misses the state in the likely Republican column. It does actually flip to him in this scenario, which I do not have it flipping to Donald Trump. I actually have Biden winning it by 11, but it is fascinating that the current polling aggregate currently has Joe Biden losing the state of Hawaii when you adjust for a 2020 polling error as of right now. In the state of Georgia, we'll actually go ahead and also look at this as well. We will see he's leading here by 4.9 percentage points. In the state of Georgia, the polling aggregate was actually really not that off. It was only about a point off. And so that actually is around a 5 point victory for Donald Trump, closer to 6 points. This data in my forecast is off from that adjusted poll. Right now, I have Donald Trump winning it by 10.7 percentage points as of right now. North Carolina is a 10.8 victory for the former president in my forecast. If we go down to North Carolina, we'll see the aggregate is around a 6.3 percentage point lead for Donald Trump, and the polls were off here by 3.1%. So if we were to actually apply that, we would get around a 9.4 percentage point victory for the former president, which is very similar to what I actually have right here. So that is quite fascinating to see that unfold in North Carolina. Notice Donald Trump he's already won the election. He's already won because he was able to win the Sun Belt and he was able to pick off Hawaii. That already gave him the Electoral College. So this just goes to show that he essentially has Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina pretty much on lock. I mean, if the polling data is without outside the margin of error, and he's been underestimated in these states, multiple times, especially in Nevada, I don't think so, but I think in Arizona, the polls were pretty spot on. But in Georgia and North Carolina, the polls have been slightly inaccurate before. So if you've been underestimated in those averages before, and he's already leading them outside the margin of error, the likeliness of him winning all these states is pretty, pretty much almost spot on. Now, Hawaii, I'm very skeptical about that. I really want to see more polling data out of here because I would actually put it in the competitive category because the fact that there is an internal with Trump up by 3 is just absolutely ridiculous as of right now. If we go to the state of Illinois, we're going to see the polling data here is not that competitive. I mean, it's closer than 2020, but it's not as competitive as people would think it is. My polling aggregate currently has a state as I think it's about almost 10 points. My forecast is only 6.5 for the state, but we do actually see here the polling lead is around 10 points, and the average here was barely underperformed. So if you were to actually fill this out, it would be around D+9, which is somewhat similar to my forecast. If we go to Virginia, this is going to be an interesting one because Virginia, as of right now, the polling aggregate is almost essentially tied. I mean, my average in the state of Virginia, if we were to actually go down to it, as of right now, is very, very crazy. Donald Trump leads it by 0.2 percentage points, and the estimated error here is around 2.4. So if you were to apply that, it actually gives Donald Trump Virginia by 2.6 percentage points as of right now, which would be a very stunning pickup for the former president as of right now. That's actually a larger victory than what I have in my actual forecast, so that is also quite interesting. If we go to Connecticut, that's something I want to look at right now. In Connecticut, Biden leads Donald Trump in a polling average by around 12.7 percentage points. We see that the polling error was around 4 points, so that does put the state in the likely Democrat column. And what's interesting is that I have Connecticut as around a 10.6 percentage point, basically victory for Biden, and I have him leading it by 8 in this adjusted polling aggregate. So that is actually quite interesting that those are lining up as well. If we go to Delaware, which is going to be interesting. It's technically Biden plus 10 because Biden's at 46, Donald Trump is at 36. That's around a Biden plus 10 sample. Now, the polling error here was actually pretty abysmal. It was almost 7 points here. And so, if we were to actually apply that, that actually puts the state of Delaware in the lean Democrat column as of right now. If we were to go to Rhode Island, which is another interesting, race here, we do see polling aggregates do have Biden up fairly easily in the state of Rhode Island. Actually, if we go over here, my latest polling average is around plus 13, and the polling error here, if we were to go check it out, is around 6. So that actually does still put the state in the likely Democrat column. As of right now, in the state of New York, this is a state that the polling average has been very, very competitive. I'm kind of surprised they didn't even put out a polling average for this yet because the polls here have been way tightened up since before. And if we actually look here, the polling error here was exactly 6 percentage points. And my aggregate, as of right now, actually has the state as a 5-point lead. And Biden is projected to win the state by 8.9%. But if you were to apply that polling error to the current average, which is around plus 5 for Biden, Donald Trump actually takes the state of New York by around a percentage point, which is also another crazy flip in my forecast here, at least for the adjusted polling. Again, I do not have the state going to Donald Trump. I have Biden winning it by around 9 points. When you look at, basically the nonpartisan voting pattern in every single state, you look at demographics, you look at the polling, and you kind of look at the trends and stuff. It's not quite there to flip yet, at least as what I'm thinking. If the polling average ends up going crazy to the right, then the result will be reflected here. But as of right now, I really don't have the state moving towards Donald Trump as of right now, at least as a flip on my forecast. But in the polling adjusted error, he does actually pick up the state of New York as of right now. If we look at the state of New Jersey, this is also going to be quite interesting because there is really only one poll out of New Jersey. It is that plus 5 poll as of right now. And if we go to the average, I believe my average has it as 6.5. And if we go to the polling error here, we do see it's around 4.4. That's going to put the state in the lean Democrat column as of right now. Biden's only at 163 electoral college votes. Donald Trump is at 313 already, and he hasn't even won any of the traditional Rust Belt states, not even New Hampshire, Nebraska second, or Maine at large. Now, Maine's first and at large are interesting because Donald Trump's actually leading here by quite a significant amount. I think this is mainly because of third party candidates taking away a lot of support here, and the state is very, prone to voting for third party candidates by the most out of every single state. We do see here that the polling average does have, Maine's first at around 8 points, so that would kind of be putting that in the likely column. And we see Maine at large. If you were to kind of average out this polling aggregate, you would have around a 3 point lead. And we see the polling error here was around 2.7. So it actually puts the state in the likely Republican column for Donald Trump as of right now. If we go to New Hampshire, this is actually one of the states where Biden is polling sort of well, but not really even because his polling lead in 2020 was much greater than this. The polling average on my model here, where I actually have him winning the state by 1.1%, he currently leads by almost 4 points. So we're going to run that off to 4. The polling error here was essentially 3.3. So if you were to apply that, the state is actually tilt Democrat as of right now, which is somewhat similar to what I have my forecast at in the state. And so now we are looking at the traditional Rust Belt states and Nebraska second, which we can do very quickly. There is a +5 poll for the Democrats and a +3 poll for Republicans. You average that out, you get D+2 as the sample for the average. And this area actually was underestimated by Biden. So if you were to apply that error, he's actually winning Nebraska by that second district in Nebraska by a likely margin. So that is very disappointing. However, we do see for the rest of the Rust Belt states, we're going to go to Wisconsin, where Donald Trump currently leads by 0.2 percentage points. Biden's kind of caught up in the aggregate, but the polling error here was just so abysmal that Donald Trump would be winning the state by 7.9% as of right now for the adjusted polling error, which is interesting because that's actually where I have the state. Donald Trump is winning the state by 7.7 percentage points. So that's kind of roughly lining up where I actually have the state at as of right now. So that is a very interesting classification. We also have the state of Michigan, where Donald Trump, has a very small polling lead. He's leading by 0.1 percentage points as of right now in the state of Michigan. However, once again, the polling error here was 5.2%. So if you were to apply that, he wins it by 5.4. And my forecast actually has him winning it by 6. So that's about a half point off from that. So that's also fairly interesting to take into note as well. And then we go to Pennsylvania, which is the last traditional 3 Rust Belt states that always tend to vote together. And if we go to the state of Pennsylvania, we'll see Donald Trump leads the aggregate by 1.1. The polling error here was around 3.5 percentage points. So if we were to apply that there, we'd actually have a lean Pennsylvania, which is really interesting to see New York and Pennsylvania and Virginia all vote in line with each other, but have Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota and Maine at large be likely Republican. I think that's very fascinating to see. And then we have the state of Minnesota, which is the last one here. We see as of right now in the aggregate, Biden leads by 2.2%. Biden kind of the lead was narrowing, but Biden kind of took the lead there as of right now. However, it is not going to be enough because Donald Trump does again end up being underestimated in 2020 by 2 points. If you were to actually swing this, it actually is tilt Democrat as of right now. So the final polling adjusted error map has Donald Trump up with 359 electoral college votes to Joe Biden's 179 electoral college votes. This is very fascinating to look at because we have, the traditional swing states going Republican. We have Virginia going red. We have New York and Hawaii going red, but not Minnesota or New Hampshire, but Maine at large easily goes Republican. So that is a very, very, very interesting classification as of right now. Meanwhile, New Mexico is not even really that competitive, and Nebraska second is actually likely, while Washington, Oregon, New Jersey, Delaware are all within essentially 4 points. So that is very interesting to see that unfold as of right now. Again, this is the adjusted polling map for the previous errors. Here is my actual forecast where Donald Trump wins by 341 electoral college votes to Biden's 197, where Washington and Oregon are likely. Colorado is a lean state with New Mexico flipping due to demographics that I believe the polling is not picking up. If you notice, a lot of the polling in New Mexico right now is a lot of Democrat internals. So once like public polling actually comes out of New Mexico that has nonpartisan, voting groups, I do actually think that the polling average is going to narrow quite a bit, and he'll actually probably win New Mexico, possibly by an even greater margin than this, but we will see what happens. Virginia and Minnesota are going Republican in my forecast as of right now. Maine at large does not actually go Republican, despite Donald Trump leading the aggregate by a bit, since the state is very left trending. And New Hampshire, even though it is still Democrat here, actually have it going to Biden by more than what it says here, even in states like Hawaii and New York as of right now. And so if you guys did enjoy this quick analysis, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you like content just like this, and if you want more like this as well. If you guys disagree with my forecast, make sure to go ahead and comment down below, and comment how you feel about the polling data and the adjusted errors from 2020. I think this is a very interesting map to look at as of right now. And I hope to see you guys in my live stream later and in my next video.